what you see is an undergraduate student doing, reviewing the literature without actually trying to understand the full, look at the full scope of scholarship of the subject. But she's using lit review as a tool to introduce main theme. She's introducing the one theme, that is, what is data mining and how is it used for surveillance purposes or tracking purposes, and who does it, and what is the current discourse on that subject. So in that sense, because the last question, what is the current discourse on the subject, she is making a lit review move. Definitely, as an undergraduate student, she's not trying to find out everything that everybody has said about how data mining is described currently. But she found one particular segment, which is there is too much focus on government data mining and surveillance as a terrible, bad thing, but no focus on how businesses do the same thing with often similar consequences. And she thought, this is the current discourse. Now, based on that finding, she argues that we need to shift our attention so that we are also looking at how businesses do the same thing and hold them responsible. So see, doing a little review led her to make an argument. It was done with the purpose of finding her own position, and she found a good one. It was not necessarily done to find a gap, but she found a gap. It was done to see what kinds of, actually it was a slow process. At first she thought she was going to just review the literature to see what it means. And then she thought, no, actually I need to go further. There are two varieties. I'm going to see what people say about these two so to see if I can find my position. Third, she compared. And she said, I can make my argument when I compare. So later on I'm going to show you how to go about using literature review as a tool for generating your research agenda. Not only as an assignment that you need to complete, but as a means toward these other larger purposes. Okay? Yes.
I'm Janelle Bradshaw de Hernandez. I'm a PhD candidate in the Technology Policy and Society program here at Stony Brook. One of my main questions around my literature review is my chapter 1 and 2 almost seem disparate. So, my topic, I won't get into it, but the topic areas, until you get to maybe the end of the third chapter, really, then you realize, all of these different areas come together. And I wasn't sure if that was okay. It worked for my qualifying and for my proposal defense, but now as I go to dissertation, I just want to make sure I keep, if there's any tips you can give on a literature review.
I think what's happening is that readers and writers approach reading and writing differently. Of course, it's a very obvious point, but let me unpack it. Readers are sometimes going through the thought process, and the realization happens at the end, so they're going to put it there. Sorry, writers, right? Mm-hmm. But at some point, you have to take a 1-week gap and become a reader. What do you want to do when you become a reader? You want to take that point at the end and put it in the front. Right. That solves the problem. Or, as a reader, you want to know why there is this disconnect. So then put on your writer hat and say, here is the connection. Say it up front. Right. In writing, we use the word front loading or foregrounding. So do that foregrounding. And we use the word readerly and writerly writing. A readerly writing is the reader that lets you get you through the process of thinking. It's okay in many cases. It's okay in literature, especially thriller novels. Actually, we're designed that way because you want to save the sacred until the end. But in academic writing, increasingly, especially larger text, less and less so, because people are impatient. The information has exploded to a point. People are not going to wait for you to do that. So I would do that. But to come back to this, the exercise here, what is the student doing? You see, I have numbered it. What is the student doing with those lit review moves? Is she defining, historicizing? Because we talked about different functions of lit review. At a very micro level, what is the student doing? Can you label? Historicizing, contextualizing, exemplifying, arguing, finding a niche, showing a new direction. What functions are these citations serving? What's the first one doing?
Define.
Define. Why would a person define with an existing scholarship rather than a dictionary definition? What does it do? Do you sometimes use a dictionary to define the term? You have? What is your thoughts about using a dictionary definition as a
Well, you said as a
citation?
support.
You use that as support. Others? When a definition is rhetorically necessary or useful. But why a dictionary definition? To say,
Maybe you use some kind of authority. It's not just me defining it. It's someone who has more authority in defining it.
the dictionary is authority, it gives you an objective meaning, or most agreed upon meaning. But if you want to say, look, even a dictionary definition focuses on this aspect of the term. Or to say, there is a secondary meaning of this term that we need to pay attention to. So if there's no other purpose than to simply define as for its own sake, using a dictionary, it's a bad move. It backfires, don't do it. In fact, there is a second term called the stipulative definition, S-T-I-P-U-L-A-T-I-V-E. A stipulative definition is a contextual definition that is adapted to the context. So you can say, in this context, we can define the term as. It's your definition, it's your argument. So, definitions can be part of an argument. Definition can serve an argument or be an argument.
So when I used the, it was diversity was the term,
Mhm.
because there were so many various
Yeah.
definitions of diversity, so
Demographic diversity.
right, it was just two, so I used the general and then, but now this is very helpful, so I can say, but in this context,
Yes,
this is
stipulative.
what,
You can also do what is called a semantic breakdown. If you look at the word, for example, I was using the word, the Sanskrit word, drishtanta, to make a whole segment of an argument in a conference last year. Drishti is to see, anta is the ending of it. The word means perspective, but perspective is by nature limited because there's so much you can see from a given angle. And then we went from there and we used the word term in English. Term is terminal because it ends like a terminal illness. But term also comes from going and exploring, and therefore it's, look at that, etymological meaning allows you to explore. Yes, words carry good baggage and bad baggage. Words carry semantic dust. They're like a stone rolling, collecting moss along the way. And sometimes you can use that as a move within you, through the dictionary, through how other people have defined it, through how you are going to define it in relation to how other people define it.
and those are contributions.
Yes. So let's not go too deep into definition. The next one is what? What is it doing? I heard you say something.
I said it identifies threat,
Aha. I said it contextualizes that particular problem in existing popular discourse. Everybody knows Snowden, right? Contextualizes. So establishes its significance. What about the next one? Business justify the use of however the citation is put within the. Yes. And supports the argument. It is used for supporting an argument. So even in a very basic undergraduate paper, you see that literature review can be and should be put within the context of getting something done, to laying out, describing a problem, toward making an argument, to describing a situation in a certain way. So let's look at the next one. The next one is a PhD student, that was me, back in 2010 or 11. Look at it again, and using the same approach. What is the writer doing? This time you can, one, two, what is the writer doing? Yeah, how is it different from what the undergrad student is doing? That's what I want to know. Okay?
Not necessarily just kind of similar to the, I guess it's not the same as the first one where you're defining a topic, but you're defining a debate at least, or defining the results of the study. Maybe not a debate, but then what's a lot different is the second source.
So the first view is more like, look how far back this goes, right?
Oh, okay,
Yeah?
yeah.
Yeah. So that's showing that this is acknowledging that this is a long-standing discourse there. Towards saying that even though there is long-standing discourse, a big history, we're still not getting this. We need to address this. As a graduate student, that move of critical intervention is stronger. Because this person has to project that they have studied, they know. They're not going to say, I have read it all, suggest that they've read it all, or they're not going to admit that they have possibly can't read it all. But there's a fine line that you walk by saying, this is how far back it goes. But maybe not saying this is the first article on the subject. That's a risky move. Some people are able to do that. I'll be able to do that if it is something that I know that it started at a conference in 2006 when I'm 70. But as a graduate student, I basically, and that's why some people didn't see that move I was making kind of vague. Yeah, but it's saying this is how far back it goes. How about the second and third? What is that paragraph doing? What are those citations doing?
Trying to support the argument made in the first paragraph. Providing necessary scholarship.
Later on, I'm going to give you a handout about reporting verbs. Let us look at reporting verbs to see what these sentences are doing. Because I've been using the word doing a lot. Look at the reporting verb. There is a rich body of scholarship that deals with is. It's an ontological statement, right? There is. And then it says, the second sentence says, for more than 4 decades, this scholarship has established. You see that? Established. That was the verb. The next one is, NNES students cannot do so without, so cannot. So it's showing problem as well as historicizing it. Second paragraph, if you look at the verb, more recently scholars both when it comes to intelligence has pointed out. It's moving toward a more specific focus. You see from the verb. Move on to the next verb. Some of the scholars who write about the ideological, it further focuses. You see that? Argue that. Now it goes from focus to argument. The next paragraph, you know that the scholars has usually dealt. You see the term usually? Then it shows a method, an approach. So what it's trying to do is historicize, find the focus, identify approaches, and then present yourself. After you have historically, logically, and methodologically identified what other people are doing, you are positioning yourself not generally, but historically, logically, and methodologically. So this is where a graduate student becomes a little more sophisticated in that. That's a lot of building the structural pieces into the review. And don't worry if that's not how you do review. This is a different discipline. Don't think that you don't do it well because you don't do it similarly. Because the way we do literature is very different. In a moment I'm going to ask you how you do it that is different. Okay, so if you look at the next paragraph, that third paragraph is about has you dealt with more theoretical issues. There's also another body of scholarship. Again, it introduces this parallel second body of literature where historical, logical, and methodological issues are again brought up. Then, with those 2 pillars with 3 parts, the student is coming at as a third dimension. Only in the 5th paragraph. This study builds on and complicates the 2 bodies of scholarship described above in response to the expectation of the more recent scholarship on multilingualism that multilingual writers are likely to draw on the social linguistic experience and abilities towards negotiating meaning, I discuss now, okay, discuss is the key word. I discuss how the prevailing monolingual standards and policies in the current institutional and professional settings may trump non-native English speaking faculties multilingual. You don't need to understand all of that junk. The thing is, you saw what the person was doing. Remember, Basha, you and I, we used to in our class, we used to talk about blah 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 method, which is you don't need to understand the content. You can still understand the accents. In the last 30 years, scientists have been focusing on blah 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 by using a blah 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 technique. But this technique has not been very effective because blah 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 doesn't do blah blah blah. Therefore, in our research, we use a second technique in order to get to the problem of blah 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 by using. We found that blah 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 does actually work when we do blah 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 focus. Yeah, I got it. I understand everything, except I didn't understand anything. So if you just put blank spaces instead of the content, you're still able to. And that's where the student's review needs to focus on. What are you doing? Are you critiquing? Are you building? Are you synthesizing? Are you adding? Are you applying? Are you showing? Are you demonstrating? Are you illustrating? Are you appealing to the community? Are you acknowledging? That's when the same tool becomes a very, very multi-tool. Like those ones that you can buy sometimes, like they have 24 things in one. What are these called? Swiss knives? Lip review is a Swiss knife. So let's look at one more. Okay? Spend a few minutes. This time it's way more complicated. So use the blah 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 technique if you're not from cell biology. Cell biology. Look at the reviews and look at what I numbered and see what on earth these people are doing. If you are trying to understand the review moves, the engagement of sources, they're very micro level lit reviews. They're not broad-based lit reviews like the one that I was doing. Without understanding the context, you would have a very difficult time. And so you realize that if you need context when you read a lit review, your readers need context also. Try just get in their shoes and see what happens. So if you are trying to understand what they're doing without actually reading the summary, if you're clever, I'm sure you're reading the summary for a few seconds before you get to the quotations. If you're not, you're probably racking your head there. You wouldn't understand. Or you are extremely smart or already informed about this kind of subject. Anyway, so who's familiar with this kind of research already? Anybody?
To
You
an
are?
extent, because it is biology.
Oh, good. Did you too go to the context and see what this research is about?
I didn't read the summary. I went straight into.
You went straight.
Yeah.
Others who went straight and got lost and had a hard time. What is your subject? Your field, yes.
Chemistry.
Chemistry. Still, not too far away, like me. For me, it's blah blah. Martin, you were saying something. Put it in context and say, what was the first move you said?
Defining.
Define it? What's the key word? What's the verb?
It's defining that, setting the context.
Yep.
Stress results in accumulations. Something is setting the context, which is contributing to issue failure.
Martin, are you a scientist?
I try to be.
You try to be? What's your field?
Technology, society.
Development society? Here's a computer scientist here. Yeah, but I think we're identifying some of them spot on, but this one I wouldn't call defining. I would say this is more like, you could say defining in a very broad sense, but otherwise it's like contextualizing, establishing context. What about the second one? You're also saying something about the second one, Martin?
Let's see. What do I say?
Wait, you know.
Okay, star sizing. Star sizing.
Huh?
Star sizing.
Any other thoughts?
It might be right, but because as emerged as a key regulator, so
Yes.
makes.
It's a very typical review move, and within the review move, it's a historicizing move. State of the art. Here's the scholarship. Why do you think they did that? It's the second move. Why do you think they, after establishing context, why do you think they went further and showed a broader historical context in which this research is done?
They're probably going to start
Huh?
doing research within that. as frame.
To establish exigency vis-a-vis what other people have done. Sometimes they are expecting those scientists to read the manuscript, literally. Because if I'm talking about refugee crisis in the world, and I don't mention Syria, people are not going to take me seriously. That's how scientific research also works. The community expects you to know the fundamentals. And so if you don't hit the fundamentals, they might wonder if you actually are serious, if you know. So even for an established scientist, some things are significant enough to say, here, like others have done. We are situating ourselves in this context. What about the next one? We modeled human leukemia produced disorders caused by conceiving homozygote in the genes required. To provide this, we required multi-part sentence in the middle. What are they doing?
Like introducing the crux of this article, like what they're doing.
Huh. Yes. Other interpretations of what they're doing? I saw a second function, maybe as important. I said building on an established method? No, understanding. Because they say caused by. Make sense? And then right in the middle of the sentence they put that. So they say we know this, that it is caused by it. So instead of saying we found out, they say others have found out how this is caused. So causes and context, perspectives and methods, historical backgrounds and definitions, these are always borrowed. So reviewing is a borrowing tool, right? It's a borrowing tool. It's not only summarizing, it's not only describing, it is borrowing for a lot of different purposes. Reviewing is not only the broad-based, bigger, vague, general idea. It is both macroscopic and microscopic. And the reason I'm focusing on why we do review is because I don't want to define reviewing outside of the context of why we use it.